Imagine you're wandering through an agricultural fair when a goat shoves its dusty nose through a metal fence. Its rectangular pupils stare straight at you. Two horns rise from the top of its skull. Just in case you needed a reminder that this is not a stuffed animal. It comes armed. You have no idea whether it's friendly. You don't know whether it bites. You're not even sure what a goat considers offensive. And yet, somehow, your hand is already coming up. It slips between the bars and heads straight for that little patch between the horns, the exact spot that looks like it needs scratching. Wait, why are you doing that? For millions of years, surviving meant keeping your distance from teeth, claws, and horns. Back away. Stay alert. Keep all 10 fingers. Simple enough. But humans keep doing the opposite. We move closer. We reach out. We touch. Not because the animal has proved it's safe. Because some part of us wants contact before the evidence is in. What kind of species places its most delicate tool against a creature that cannot look up and say, "You can trust me"? Your mind asks for proof. Your hand asks for permission. And sometimes the hand gets there first. Every time you reach out and touch an animal, your brain has to settle a quiet argument with itself. One system pulls you closer. It notices warmth, softness, eye contact, stillness, small clues that this might become a social connection. The other system hits the brakes. It watches the mouth, the hooves, the angle of the head. That sudden shift in body weight that might mean the animal is about to bite, kick, or disappear. Bite, kick, bolt. So the question isn't simply, why do humans like touching animals? That's the easy version. The deeper question is what makes the defensive brain lower its shield. And wait, lowering the shield doesn't mean your survival system has switched off. It means that, for a few seconds, your brain has decided closeness might be worth the risk. To understand why that happens, we have to pull apart 3 different layers. First, the primate hand, an organ that was building relationships before it was building tools. Then the animal on the other side of the contact, reading the hand and deciding how to respond. And finally, generations of selection that turned certain species into animals capable of living beside us, being handled by us, and sometimes actively asking us to continue. This is not instinct fighting intelligence. It is instinct fighting instinct. Petting begins when the social brain temporarily defeats the survival brain. Now go back more than 6 million years to a time before the human lineage had fully separated from the branch that would eventually lead to modern chimpanzees. Imagine a group of primates beneath a forest canopy. One animal sits still while another leans in close. Fingers separate strands of hair. Nails move across exposed skin. A parasite is found, pinched between 2 fingertips, and pulled away. At first, the exchange looks purely practical. Cleaner skin, less irritation, 1 fewer insect drinking blood. But then something curious happens. The hand keeps moving even after the obvious work is finished. And that extra contact matters. Across living primate species, grooming does more than remove parasites. It can help establish who is allowed to approach, who belongs beside whom, and who might step in when conflict breaks out. The fingers may be cleaning a body, but they are also checking the strength of a relationship. Can I sit this close? Will you let me touch you here? If trouble starts, Are we still on the same side?
Of course, no ancient grooming session ever fossilized. No gentle scratch was preserved in stone. No affectionate handprint waited underground for archaeologists to uncover it.
Researchers have to reconstruct this history indirectly from anatomy, evolutionary relationships, and the same patterns of grooming repeated across primate species living today. Before the human hand shaped stone, it shaped alliances. Before it gripped a spear, it learned how to remain still against another body. Before it wrote promises, it performed them. Your hand did not begin as some neutral piece of biological machinery, waiting for humans to invent a purpose for it. Long before writing, engineering, or machines, its movements already carried social meaning. Before hands became tools, they were instruments of trust. Now shift to Botswana in the 2000s, where female chacma baboons live inside a society that can become dangerous almost overnight. A dominant male disappears, a new male arrives. The hierarchy rearranges itself. Suddenly, the air is filled with barking calls, pounding feet, exposed teeth, and the threat that an unfamiliar male may attack infants. For the females living through it, this is not some primate version of office politics. The consequences are physical. The upheaval can affect who gets access to food, who can rest without being harassed, and whose offspring survives. So what do the females do? They do not respond by spreading their attention evenly across the entire group. They don't groom every available baboon in the hope of keeping everyone happy. Instead, during periods of social instability, researchers found that females often concentrated their grooming on a smaller number of partners. Their social networks became narrower but more focused. Measurements of glucocorticoid metabolites, chemical indicators associated with stress, suggested that females with these concentrated grooming relationships coped better during the disruption. That doesn't mean every stroke of fur works like a tranquilizer. Social life is never that tidy. But the pattern reveals something hiding beneath the surface. The baboon is not just removing dirt. She is choosing to spend time on this individual instead of another. She is moving into biting distance and trusting that the teeth will stay hidden. She is touching vulnerable skin and being allowed to keep touching it. Minute after minute, the body itself becomes the evidence. I can come close. You will not attack. We still belong together. That is why grooming works like a kind of social currency. It costs time, it demands attention, it requires access to another body. And like any valuable currency, it gains meaning through repetition. One grooming session may calm a moment. 100 grooming sessions can help build a relationship. And once you see that, your own urge to pet an animal starts to look less random. Yes, texture matters. Soft fur feels good against the skin. But beneath that sensory pleasure sits an older message, carried forward from a primate past. When your fingers move through fur, the gesture still whispers something ancient. You are inside my circle. Grooming cleans the body, but its deeper function is to secure the bond. Now leave the Botswana floodplains behind and step into a behavioral laboratory. A researcher places a hand inside a rat's enclosure, but the hand does not move the way you might expect. There is no slow stroke from the rat's head down to its tail. Instead, the fingers dart forward. They circle. They gently flip the rat, let it recover, pull away, then rush back in again. Short movements, quick changes.
a rhythm designed to imitate the rough and tumble play of young rats wrestling with one another. To human ears, the room might sound almost silent. It isn't. An ultrasonic microphone records calls near 50 kilohertz, far beyond the range most adult humans can hear. Research on rat tickling has linked these calls with playful interactions and positive affect. And the rats do not always behave like passive subjects being handled by a human. Some chase the hand when it retreats. Some approach it again. Some return as though the strange five-fingered creature has stopped the game too soon. And remember what animal we're talking about here. A rat. Not a round-eyed puppy. Not some fluffy creature designed to trigger an instant adorable response. Not an animal shaped like something you'd buy in a toy shop. A rat. So why does the contact work? Because pleasant touch is not defined by softness alone. Rhythm matters. Predictability matters. Control matters. The hand approaches, but the rat can move away. The hand begins the interaction, but the rat can answer. The human offers the game, but the animal helps decide whether the game continues. That distinction changes everything. Petting often looks like something a human does to an animal, a hand moving across a passive living surface. But social touch is not a one-way action. It is a conversation carried through pressure, posture, distance, hesitation, and return. A stiff body says one thing. A loose body says something else. An animal that leaves has answered. An animal that comes back has answered too. This is why consent is not merely a human concept awkwardly pasted onto animal behavior. At its simplest, it means the other body still has a choice. It can approach. It can stay. It can leave. Not possession. Participation. The hand becomes social only when it is capable of hearing an answer that never becomes a word. Touch becomes social only when the other body is free to answer. If you're still with me, hit subscribe because the next animal shows how a human hand can reshape evolution. In 1959, geneticist Dmitry Belyaev and researcher Lyudmila Trut began an experiment involving silver foxes in Siberia. These foxes had already been bred in captivity for the fur trade, but they were not pets. Human presence did not automatically mean comfort or affection. When someone approached, some foxes froze. Some fled. Some snapped. Others threw themselves against the limits of the cage, desperate to create distance. The researchers were not looking for foxes that could perform clever tricks. They did not choose the highest jumper, the fastest runner, or the animal with the most attractive coat. They focused on one thing: how each fox responded when a human came closer and attempted to handle its body. Then they bred from the individuals that showed the lowest levels of fear and aggression. Generation after generation, the same pressure returned. Tolerate the human. After roughly 6 generations of intense selection, a small proportion of the foxes were no longer merely putting up with contact. They began moving toward their caretakers. They licked human hands. They wagged their tails. Some made attention-seeking vocalizations when a person appeared. Wait, somewhere along the way, the hand had changed roles. At the beginning, it was a test. Something approaching the body. Something to endure without panicking or attacking. Later, it became something the foxes actively moved toward. Now, this experiment did not recreate the complete history of dog domestication, and the project did not begin with untouched wild foxes pulled straight from a forest. But it showed how quickly behavior can shift when human beings control which animals get to reproduce. Fear affects access. Calmness earns food, shelter, and descendants. Humans choose the animals that allow closeness. Those animals gain resources from human beings. Their offspring inherit tendencies that make the next encounter easier, and the encounter after that easier still. One species rewards approach. The other becomes less likely to retreat. Slowly, contact replaces alarm. A barrier becomes a bridge. We did not merely stumble across animals that already tolerated the human touch. Through selection, we helped create populations that began to seek it. But there is an obvious problem with this idea. If the human hand is so eager to connect with living things, why don't you offer it to a coiled snake? Why not run your fingers over a porcupine with every quill standing upright? Why not reach toward an ostrich charging at roughly 70 kilometers per hour and see how the conversation goes? Because the bonding system never gets the final vote by itself. Your brain is constantly reading the animal in front of you. How fast is it moving? Where are its eyes pointed? Is the body loose or rigid? What covers its surface fur, feathers, scales, spines? Have you encountered this animal before? And if the situation changes, can you still pull your hand back? A creature approaching slowly, with relaxed muscles and room to leave, presents one kind of problem. A creature standing stiff, locking its gaze onto you, or displaying teeth, horns, quills, or claws, presents another. Wait, curiosity has boundaries. Not every living thing invites the hand. Not every calm animal wants contact. And even an animal you know may not be safe in every mood, every setting, or every second. The desire to touch pulls you closer. Perceived permission opens the gate. Perceived danger slams it shut. The hand reaches only when the shield comes down. The easy answer is that humans pet animals because animals are cute. Soft fur, large eyes, rounded faces. Case closed, right? Not quite. Cuteness cannot explain why adult primates spend long stretches grooming one another. It cannot explain a rat chasing a researcher's hand because the game ended too soon. It cannot explain silver foxes changing their response to human contact across generations of selection. And it certainly cannot explain why the exact same dog may make you want to bury your fingers in its fur while it lies relaxed beside you, then make you step back the moment its muscles tighten and its stare hardens. The animal has not stopped being cute. The social signal has changed. So petting is not just a reflex triggered by big eyes, soft hair, or a face that reminds you of an infant. It is something older, an ancient social protocol that somehow crossed the line between species. One body offers contact. The other body evaluates the risk. Then, both sides begin making adjustments in real time: pressure, rhythm, distance. Your hand slows when the animal stiffens. The animal leans closer when the contact feels safe. One moves. The other responds. One pauses. The other decides whether to stay. Imagine that for a second. Two nervous systems communicating without sharing a single word. When the animal remains in place, presses its weight into your fingers, or turns around and comes back after you stop, something remarkable has happened. Neither defensive system has disappeared. Neither body has become completely helpless or completely trusting. They have simply reached a temporary agreement. Not total trust, negotiated safety. That is the deeper meaning of petting. It is not one creature acting upon another while the second one merely tolerates it. It is two bodies continually deciding whether closeness is still acceptable. Touch is the question. Staying is the answer. The next time you place your hand on an animal, pay attention to how much information passes between you without ever becoming conscious thought. You feel whether the muscles beneath the skin are relaxed or braced. You notice whether the animal's weight shifts into your palm or quietly pulls away from it. You register a change in breathing, a slight turn of the head, an ear moving backward, or a paw sliding 3 centimeters across the floor. You read, you adjust, then you ask again. And while you are reading the animal is reading you. The speed of your approach tells it whether you are predictable. The pressure of your fingers tells it whether you are paying attention. The moment you stop when it shifts away tells it whether its choice matters or whether your desire to touch matters more. That is why successful contact feels deeper than running your hand across an interesting surface. Fur by itself is not the reward. Warmth by itself is not the reward. Acceptance is. A living creature that cannot explain its intentions has allowed you into the private space around its body. It does not grant that permission with a sentence. It cannot make a promise. It cannot reassure you with carefully chosen words. Instead, it answers through weight, breath, posture, movement, and the decision not to leave. Words can flatter. Words can conceal. Words can tell you exactly what you want to hear. A body that remains has to remain in real time. So for a few seconds, you are not simply touching another species. You are being watched by it, measured by it, judged by it, and then, at least for that moment, accepted. When an animal chooses to remain beneath your hand, touch becomes proof. Now return to the agricultural fair. The goat is still standing behind the metal fence. Dust clings around its nose. Those strange rectangular pupils continue watching you. Your hand still rests in the narrow patch between two horns. But the gesture no longer looks quite so foolish. It is not just an impulsive reaction to an animal that happens to look cute. It is the present-day end of a chain stretching deep into our evolutionary past. That chain began with primates sitting close enough to separate one another's fur. It passed through grooming partnerships that held alliances together during conflict. It moved through playful exchanges between different species, and it continued through generations of animals selected for their ability to tolerate human presence, live near human bodies, and eventually seek out the human hand. Imagine the distance contained inside that single scratch between the horns. More than 6 million years of approach and retreat, caution and curiosity, danger and trust. Among millions of species that often survive by maintaining distance, humans carried an ancient bonding system beyond immediate family, beyond the group, and eventually beyond the boundaries of our own species. We keep asking the living world the same question.
Not with language. With the hand. May I come closer? Sometimes the answer is a flash of teeth. Sometimes it is a body turning away. Sometimes it is flight. But every so often, a creature built from a completely different evolutionary history relaxes beneath your fingers. It shifts toward you. It stays. That is the ancient hope hidden inside the urge to pet. Not ownership, permission. Your hand reaches before certainty because connection has always required one body to risk crossing the distance first. We reach. The living world answers. Subscribe!